Before we begin today's unbelievable courtroom case, make sure you subscribe to the channel, like this video, and comment below where you're watching from. If you enjoy powerful courtroom stories filled with shocking twists, emotional moments, and justice served, turn on notifications so you never miss a new case review. Now let me tell you about a case that started with a janitor and ended with an entire courtroom questioning everything they believed about truth. The woman sitting at the plaintiff's table was one of the most recognizable faces in America. Millions of people trusted her. Millions watched her every night. She had built an entire career exposing lies. But on the day she walked into my courtroom, someone was waiting for her, someone she never expected to see again. And by the end of the case, her entire life would begin to fall apart. The morning started normally, at least it appeared normal. The plaintiff was Rebecca Collins, a nationally famous television news anchor. For nearly 15 years, she had hosted one of the highest-rated investigative news programs in the country. She had won awards, interviewed presidents, and built a reputation as a fearless journalist. The defendant was a 63-year-old school janitor named Daniel Mercer. When most people first saw Daniel, they immediately underestimated him. His work boots were old, his uniform looked faded. His hands were rough from decades of labor. Nothing about him looked important. Rebecca arrived with 3 attorneys. Daniel arrived alone. That immediately caught my attention. People rarely challenge powerful public figures without legal help. Yet Daniel sat quietly at the defense table with nothing but a worn leather folder. No attorney, no assistant, no witnesses. Just a folder. The lawsuit itself appeared simple. Rebecca claimed Daniel had publicly damaged her reputation by repeatedly accusing her of destroying an innocent man's life years earlier. According to her attorneys, Daniel had approached multiple reporters, former employees, and even network executives, claiming Rebecca had knowingly broadcast false information during a scandal 15 years earlier. The accusation had started spreading online. Rebecca wanted it stopped immediately. One of her attorneys stood confidently. "Your Honor, this case is straightforward. Mr. Mercer has spent months spreading false statements regarding my client. These statements have damaged her professional reputation and caused measurable harm." Rebecca nodded confidently. The courtroom seemed to agree. Then I looked toward Daniel. He hadn't reacted once. No anger, no frustration, nothing. Just silence. That silence interested me because guilty people often talk too much. Daniel hadn't spoken at all. Finally, I addressed him. "Mr. Mercer, do you deny making these statements?" Daniel slowly stood. His voice was calm. "I made every one of them." The courtroom immediately stirred. Rebecca's lawyers exchanged smiles. They believed the case was over. But Daniel wasn't finished. He continued. And every word was true. The smiles disappeared instantly. Now the room was paying attention. Rebecca leaned forward. Her expression hardened. Daniel looked directly at her. For several seconds, neither spoke. Then Daniel said something that changed the atmosphere immediately. "I waited 15 years for this day." The courtroom became silent. Rebecca's confidence visibly weakened. Only slightly, but I noticed it. Years on the bench teach you to notice very small things. And Rebecca Collins had just become uncomfortable. One of her lawyers immediately stood. "Your Honor, this is exactly the problem. Mr. Mercer has become obsessed with a fabricated conspiracy theory." Daniel slowly shook his head. "No," then he pointed toward Rebecca. "This isn't a conspiracy." His voice grew heavier. "It's a grave." Nobody moved, nobody spoke. The words landed like a hammer. A grave. Rebecca looked away for the first time. Daniel noticed, so did I. Then he opened the leather folder. Inside was a newspaper clipping. Old yellow, worn from age. He handed it to the bailiff. The clipping eventually reached my desk. The headline immediately caught my attention. "Local teacher accused in school." Scandal below the headline was a photograph. A smiling teacher, mid-40s, glasses, sickened eyes. The article described how a respected teacher named Michael Harper had been accused of misconduct involving school funds. The accusations had destroyed his career almost overnight. He was fired, publicly humiliated, and within months he disappeared. Nobody knew where he went. Or so the public believed. Daniel looked toward me. "Michael Harper was my best friend." The courtroom remained quiet. Daniel continued. "He taught children for 22 years. His voice cracked slightly. He never stole a dollar." Rebecca's lawyers immediately objected. But something about Daniel's tone felt different. He wasn't performing. He was hurting. Genuinely hurting. I allowed him to continue. Daniel explained that 15 years earlier, Rebecca Collins had aired a nationally televised investigative report claiming Michael Harper was involved in financial misconduct. The report went viral. School officials panicked. Sponsors withdrew support. Parents demanded answers. Within weeks, Michael lost everything: his job, his reputation, his marriage, his future. The courtroom listened carefully. Then Rebecca finally spoke. The investigation was accurate. Daniel immediately looked at her. No, his voice was stronger now. It wasn't. Rebecca crossed her arms. My reporting was supported by evidence. Daniel took a deep breath, then asked a question that stunned everyone. If it was accurate, he paused. Why did your network pay a confidential settlement 2 years later? The room exploded with whispers. Rebecca froze. Completely froze. That reaction lasted less than a second. But it was enough. I saw it. The jury would have seen it too if this had been a jury trial. Her lawyers immediately objected, loudly, aggressively, but the damage had already been done. Because suddenly everyone was wondering the same thing. Settlement? What settlement? Rebecca's lead attorney quickly regained control. Your Honor, irrelevant. Maybe it wasn't, but Daniel wasn't finished. He reached into the folder again. This time he removed a photograph. The image was recent, very recent. The courtroom screen displayed it. The second it appeared, Rebecca Collins went pale. The photograph showed a man standing outside a small church in rural Montana, gray hair, older face, but unmistakably the same person from the newspaper article. Michael Harper, alive. The courtroom erupted. People stood. Reporters grabbed their phones. Even the attorneys looked shocked because the man everyone believed had vanished 15 years earlier was alive. Daniel looked directly at Rebecca and quietly said, he never disappeared. The room fell silent. Daniel pointed toward the photograph. He spent 15 years hiding from a lie. Rebecca's hands began trembling. For the first time since entering court, she no longer looked powerful. She looked scared, really scared. Then Daniel said something that made my stomach tighten. He's here. Silence. Silence. I leaned forward. Who is here? Daniel slowly turned toward the courtroom doors, then looked back at me and said, Michael Harper is sitting in this courthouse right now. The entire courtroom exploded because if that was true, then this case was about to become far bigger than anyone imagined. The courtroom erupted. People were standing. Reporters rushed toward the hallway. Attorneys began whispering frantically, and through all the noise, Rebecca Collins remained frozen in her chair. The confident television star who had walked into court expecting an easy victory suddenly looked like someone watching a nightmare unfold. I struck the gavel repeatedly. Order. The room slowly settled. Then I looked toward Daniel. You are telling this court that Michael Harper is inside this courthouse? Daniel nodded. Yes, Your Honor. The room immediately became tense again. Rebecca's attorney stood up. This is ridiculous, but his voice lacked confidence. Because everyone in the room had seen Rebecca's reaction to the photograph. Everyone. I turned toward Daniel. Where is he? Daniel looked toward the rear courtroom doors, then quietly answered, waiting. The room fell silent, the kind of silence that feels heavy, dangerous, uncomfortable. I had seen thousands of cases, but very few moments like this, because suddenly the entire lawsuit depended on one question. Why would a man spend 15 years hiding from the public? Rebecca's legal team requested an immediate recess. I denied it. Too many people wanted answers, including me. Daniel slowly walked toward the witness stand. For the first time, he looked nervous, not scared, nervous. Like someone carrying a burden for years. Then he sat down. I asked him the obvious question. Why now? Daniel looked at Rebecca, then back at me, his eyes filled with emotion, because he was dying. The courtroom went completely silent. Several people gasped. Rebecca's expression changed instantly. Daniel continued. 3 months ago, Michael was diagnosed with terminal cancer. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Daniel swallowed hard. He doesn't have much time left. The room remained frozen. 15 years of silence. And now the truth was finally coming out. Rebecca looked down at the table. For the first time, she seemed unable to meet anyone's eyes. Then Daniel explained what happened. After the televised investigation destroyed Michael's career, nobody wanted to hire him. Schools rejected him. Employers rejected him. Friends disappeared. Even people who knew him stopped answering calls. Because once television labels someone guilty, most people never question it. Daniel's voice cracked. He lost everything in 6 Several spectators wiped tears from their eyes. Daniel continued. His wife left. Another pause. His son stopped speaking to him. Another. And eventually, he struggled to finish. He stopped speaking to everyone. The room was silent. Even Rebecca's attorneys weren't objecting anymore, because this no longer felt like a legal argument. It felt like a tragedy. Then I asked the question everyone wanted answered. If Michael was innocent, I leaned forward. What proof do you have? Daniel looked down, then slowly smiled, not because he was happy, because he knew the answer was finally coming. He reached into the folder again. This time he removed a small blue notebook, old, damaged, worn from years of use. Rebecca immediately recognized it. The color drained from her face. I saw it instantly, so did everyone else. Daniel held up the notebook. Michael kept journals. The courtroom listened carefully. No recordings, no hidden tapes, no secret files. He looked directly at Rebecca, just the truth. Rebecca's attorney immediately objected, but I wanted to hear more. Daniel explained that after losing everything, Michael spent years documenting every letter, every court document, every newspaper article, every school record connected to the case. Obsessively, painfully, page after page, year after year, trying to understand how his life had been destroyed. Then Daniel opened the notebook. Inside were hundreds of handwritten entries, dates, names, witnesses, copies of requests, public records, everything. The room became fascinated. But then Daniel revealed the real reason the notebook mattered, because hidden inside one page was something nobody expected. A name, one specific name, a witness. Someone who had never testified, someone who had never spoken publicly, someone who worked at the school 15 years earlier. And according to the notebook, that witness knew exactly what happened. The courtroom exploded with whispers. Rebecca suddenly looked terrified, not nervous, terrified. Then Daniel said something that changed everything. The witness is here too. Complete silence, agon. People looked toward the doors. Rebecca's attorneys looked toward the doors. Even the bailiffs looked toward the doors. Daniel slowly pointed toward the hallway, then quietly said, "For 15 years, she stayed silent because she was afraid." The room became tense. Daniel continued, "But today she isn't afraid anymore." I felt chills, because whatever was about to happen, Rebecca Collins clearly did not want it to happen. Then the courtroom doors opened. Slowly, everyone turned. A woman entered, late 60s, gray hair, civil clothing, no lawyers, no cameras, no attention seeking. Just a woman carrying an old cardboard box. The second Rebecca saw her, she stopped breathing. The woman walked forward step by step and placed the box directly on the evidence table. Nobody spoke. Nobody moved. Then the woman looked directly at Rebecca Collins and quietly said, "I should have told the truth 15 years ago." The entire courtroom exploded, because whatever was inside that box had just turned a simple defamation lawsuit into something far more dangerous. And for the first time all day, Rebecca Collins looked like she wanted to run. The courtroom had become so quiet that you could hear the air conditioning humming through the ceiling vents. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Every eye was locked on the cardboard box, sitting in the middle of the evidence table. The elderly woman stood beside it. Rebecca Collins looked like she had seen a ghost. And honestly, I was beginning to think she had. The woman slowly raised her hand and took the oath. Then she sat down. I asked her to state her name. "My name is Eleanor Price." The moment she said it, Rebecca closed her eyes. The reaction lasted only a second, but I saw it. Eleanor Price had been the vice principal at Michael Harper's school 15 years earlier. She wasn't a celebrity. She wasn't famous. She wasn't powerful. She was simply a woman who had carried a secret for 15 years, and secrets become heavier with age. I asked her why she had come forward now. Eleanor looked toward Daniel, then toward Rebecca. Finally, she answered, "Because Michael Harper is dying." The room became still. "He deserves the truth before he dies." Several people lowered their heads. Then Eleanor slowly opened the cardboard box. Inside were hundreds of documents, original records, personal evaluations, meeting notes, handwritten reports, school board correspondence, everything carefully organized. The courtroom watched in complete silence. Then Eleanor pulled out a single folder, red, faded. 15 years old, she placed it on the witness stand and immediately started crying. Real tears, the kind people cry when guilt has followed them for years. Then she said something nobody expected. Michael Harper never stole any money. The courtroom exploded. Reporters rushed for their phones. Rebecca's attorneys jumped to their feet. I struck the gavel repeatedly. But the damage was already done. Because Eleanor wasn't finished, she opened the folder. Inside was the original school audit, the same audit that had started the entire scandal. The audit everyone believed proved Michael's guilt, but it didn't, not even close. According to the original findings, Michael Harper had been completely cleared, completely. No missing money, no misconduct, no wrongdoing, nothing. The room went silent. Then I asked the obvious question. If he was cleared, I leaned forward. Why was he publicly accused? Eleanor looked directly at Rebecca, and for the first time all day, Rebecca Collins looked terrified, not nervous, not uncomfortable, terrified. Eleanor's voice shook, because the truth wasn't dramatic. Nobody moved, nobody spoke. Eleanor continued. The investigation ended quietly. Another pause. Nobody cared. Then she looked directly at Rebecca, until a reporter showed up. The room froze. Rebecca lowered her eyes. Eleanor continued. The story was supposed to be dropped. She swallowed hard. But a scandal attracted viewers. The silence became unbearable. Then Eleanor revealed the detail that changed everything. Rebecca Collins had received the final audit before the story aired. She knew Michael Harper had been cleared. She knew. The courtroom exploded. People literally stood from their seats. Several spectators shouted. Even Rebecca's legal team looked stunned, because this wasn't a mistake anymore. This wasn't bad reporting. This was something much worse. Rebecca slowly stood. For several seconds, she said nothing. Then finally she spoke. And nobody expected what came next. She didn't deny it. She didn't argue. She didn't blame anyone. Instead, she started crying. The courtroom fell silent again. Rebecca wiped tears from her face, then looked toward me, and quietly said, "She's telling the truth." The room froze. Donald's silence, years of denial, years of lawsuits, years of protecting her image. Gone just like that. Rebecca looked toward the gallery, then toward Daniel, finally toward the courtroom doors, and whispered, "I ruined his life." Nobody moved. Then the doors opened. Slowly, the entire courtroom turned. And there he was, Michael Harper, the man everyone thought had disappeared, the man whose life had been destroyed, the man who had spent 15 years carrying a reputation he never deserved. He looked older, thinner, weaker. Cancer had clearly taken its toll, but the second he entered, the entire room stood, every person, every lawyer, every reporter, every spectator. Nobody told them to stand. They simply did. Michael slowly walked forward. Daniel immediately began crying. The two friends embraced. The courtroom remained completely silent. Then Michael looked toward Rebecca, the woman who had changed his life forever. Rebecca couldn't even look at him. Tears streamed his face. Finally, Michael spoke. His voice was weak, but clear. 15 years is a long time. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. Michael smiled sadly. I spent years hating you. Rebecca lowered her head. Then Michael continued. But I didn't come here for revenge. The room became emotional immediately. I came here because I don't have much time left. Several people began crying, including reporters, including attorneys, even some court officers. Then Michael said the sentence nobody will ever forget. I don't want the rest of my life to be spent carrying anger. The courtroom completely broke. Rebecca started sobbing. Daniel covered his face. Eleanor cried openly. And for the first time, Michael Harper looked free. Rebecca slowly walked toward him, the same woman who had spent years protecting her reputation.